Morning, guys. So today we are going to talk about ontology and what that has to do with the sacraments. To this point, we've studied ritual, we've studied tradition, we've studied sign and symbol, and all of these things that go into what sacraments are. But today we are going to focus specifically on what happens in a sacrament, the change that takes place. And in particular, we're going to look at baptism, confirmation, Eucharist, holy orders. And in order to do so, I'm going to talk about sacraments with a capital S, the 7 sacraments, and sacraments with a lowercase s. And I'm going to talk about some of these sacramental moments in my own life and ontological changes that have taken place for me. So before I get into that, let me just get a definition of what ontology is, or what an ontological change is. So ontology is the study of being. It's a metaphysical study, the study of existence, of being. It's from the Greek, ontos and logos, so study of being. Now, when we talk in the Catholic Church about an ontological change, this is the shift that happens at the moment of, let's say, baptism, at the moment of confirmation, the laying on of hands, and holy orders. This is what happens with the bread and wine that will become the body and the blood. It is an ontological change that takes place. So let me explain this abstract theory with, like I said, an example from my life. When I was in 5th grade, I was a very different Matt Schaefer. Physically, I was smaller and I had a lot more hair, but I believe that my personality was a lot different. In general, I think that I was a little bit more timid. I think I struggled socially, and it's just, a very different person. In the summer going into my 5th grade year, my parents sent me off to summer camp up in the Sierras, and this summer camp was like a sleepaway camp. You're up there for like a week or a week plus, and you go on like backpacking trips, and you do like archery and all like the typical stuff that you do at a summer camp, at a sleepaway camp. And at this particular camp, they had these like bracelets that you got, and the bracelets had beads on them. And the beads were markers for all the different things that you did while you were at camp. And so some of like the returner campers had beads from bracelets from like multiple years. And they racked up all these beads that signified the different things that they did. It was like earning a medal or, something to wear that signified that you had accomplished something. So, this summer camp, like I said, had a lot of returning campers, and they all kind of like had their inside jokes, and I was a newbie, I was an outsider, and the second day in camp, like we were packing up, getting ready to go on a backpacking trip, and we were going to this location called Slip and Slide. Pretty long hike to get out there. We set up camp, and then immediately after setting up camp, we hiked along this river for about a mile. And it's called Slip and Slide for a reason, because like all the rocks were mossy and slippery, and people were like falling and hurting themselves. We hiked about for a mile along this river, and then we finally got to our destination, which was this waterfall. And, as a 5th grader Schaefer, to me, this waterfall seemed like it was like 30 feet tall. But I don't know how tall it really was. But we got there, and, all all of a sudden, everybody started going off one by one, jumping from the top of the waterfall into this, what seemed like a tiny little pool at the bottom of the waterfall. And I'm sitting up there at the top, like watching all these other campers go. And like, no way, I'm not going to do this. This is crazy. Like, I could hurt myself. And so, the counselor came over, because at that point, like, I was the only one who hadn't gone. And like, Matt, you wanna go? And I was like, no, I had a friend who like jumped off a rock like that and like hit his head and like got paralyzed, and I just, no, I'm not really feeling it, which is the lie. And he was like, oh, that's fine. If you decide you want to, great. If not, like, come down, into the pool area. But it's cool. So, they all took turns, like, jumping and coming back, and they were having a great time. And, at this point, I still felt like I was kind of an outsider in the cabin. All these other people, like, had relationships and knew one another. And I was this nobody. And I was going to be stuck there, with this cabin for the rest of the week, at least. So I was like weighing my options, and I was like, might as well. So gathered up the courage, stepped at the edge of the waterfall, and looked down, and like, oh my God, it was really high, really, really high. But I just kind of closed my eyes and took a leap of faith. And I jumped, hit the water. Oh my God, like my feet hurt so bad when they slapped against the surface of the water. But it was awesome. It was so much fun. And when I came up from the water, like they were all cheering and everything, whatever. But I was a different person. I mean, obviously, like physically, I was still the same, but I was a different person. In a sense, the old Matt Schaefer had died, and what rose from that water was a new person. And here's what I mean by that. I was part of the group. Like, I had been initiated. I felt like I belonged. That place ended up being something that was very, very formational in my life. I ended up like going back as a camper many years, and then as a counselor many years. I learned so many things at that camp, so many things about myself, and so many like skills and whatnot. I got like baptism, like I got a new name, I got a nickname, like all these other guys had nicknames. I got that bead, which was like a marker that like I had this experience. So, I jumped off the waterfall at Slip and Slide. That was like this crystal blue bead. I was changed. It was an ontological change. There was a shift that happened inside of me. That physically, I was the same person, right? I didn't get taller or stronger or anything like that. I didn't all of a sudden like acquire new elements inside of me. But what changed was my being. Not unlike H2O, is still the same molecules, whether it is gas, liquid, solid. It's still the same being. It's still the same physical molecules, but the being changes. How it is changes. And that's what happened to me with this sacramental experience, with a small s, sacrament. this sacrament of initiation into the camp by jumping off this waterfall, being baptized, getting a new name, getting the bead. We have sacramental experiences like this all the time in our lives, like the sacramental experience of getting a driver's license, not unlike a sacrament in the church with a capital S. You have to study to get your driver's license, right? Like you study for confirmation classes. You have to go through the initiation process, right? You have to like take this written test, and then you have to do the driving test, and you're like sweating bullets, and then you get certified by somebody, and then they give you a physical sign that you are now part of this community of drivers, and that sign is the license itself, the physical license. In a lot of ways, that's a sacramental experience with a small lowercase s. You are, in a sense, a new being. You previously were not a driver, and now you are. So all kinds of experiences like this that we have in our lives. So baptism. There's an ontological change that happens in you in baptism. Not unlike me jumping off of that waterfall and going into the water, we, as the language says in baptism, we go under the water and we die with Christ and we rise anew. We have put on Christ in our baptism. There's also like the element of cleansing of original sin, but we die to our former self, and we arise a new being. We are now part of this Christian community. Holy orders. Holy orders. Some of you guys did "and with your spirit" as one of the images that you studied. And you learned that the origin of that "and with your spirit" is that when the priest says, "Peace be with you," and you say, "and with your spirit," you are saying that because you want that peace to be returned to him, not to the man, but the spirit that he was given, that he is using in his office as a priest, who is celebrating this mass. When a person is ordained a priest, they're indelibly changed. They have a new being in the church. They are no longer a lay person, but they are a priest, or a deacon, or a bishop. This is a change in their being and their relationship with the church, and with Eucharist. This bread, this wine, it is still, like, on a molecular level, it is still bread. It is still wine. But what happens is an ontological change. The being of this is no longer simply bread. It's no longer the same thing. It's no longer just wine. This is the body of Christ. This is the blood of Christ. It has been changed on an ontological level. The being of it is different. So, that is the subject for our class today, and for the questions that will follow. Thank you, and see you soon.